I humiliated and rejected my husband to flirt with a colleague. Until he got tired and asked me for a divorce, I regretted it and it was already too late. My name is Valeria, and until recently I swore I had my life figured out. Married to Gabriel for more than 10 years, we built a solid home, a refuge of love and complicity. Our story seemed like something out of a fairy tale. We met young, we fell madly in love, and we swore eternal love at the altar. The first years were an idyll, a perpetual honeymoon where every day was a new adventure, a constant discovery of each other. Gabriel was my Prince Charming, my perfect partner, my soulmate. Our marriage blossomed like a carefully tended garden. We shared dreams, laughter, confidences. We built a life together brick by brick, based on respect, admiration, and a love that I believed was unbreakable. We were the envy of our friends, the example of a perfect couple for our families. And inside, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. But like everything in life, perfection is an ephemeral illusion. Over the years, a seed of discontent began to germinate inside me. A strange, indefinable feeling that little by little grew into a dark shadow that spread over our marriage. I could not say when it started exactly. Maybe it was something gradual, imperceptible at first, but over time it became more evident, more annoying. I began to feel a dull anger towards Gabriel, a constant irritation at his habits, at his customs, at his mere presence. That man who once seemed perfect to me, now seemed bland, predictable, boring. His romantic details, once adorable, now seemed cheesy, cloying. His gestures of affection, once welcome, now felt clingy, suffocating. I felt that I had wasted the best years of my life tied to a man who no longer fulfilled me, who no longer excited me, who no longer made me feel alive. The routine, the monotony had killed the magic, had extinguished the spark, and I, inside, rebelled against that gray, predictable existence, without strong emotions or overflowing passions. I began to treat Gabriel differently. At first, subtly, almost unconsciously. I rejected his attempts at intimate approach with banal excuses. I'm tired. I have a headache. I do not feel like it today. Every time he made an affectionate comment, an innocent joke, I would repel it with a gesture of annoyance, with a sharp reply, with an uncomfortable silence. The situation intensified over the months. The rejection became more evident, more hurtful, and I, instead of looking for a solution, of talking to Gabriel, of trying to save our marriage, I let myself be carried away by the current of discontent, feeding my anger, justifying my attitude, convinced that I had every right in the world to feel that way. In my mind, I had convinced myself that Gabriel was the culprit of my unhappiness, of my weariness, of my feeling of emptiness, and my friends, my confidants, my accomplices in this emotional drift, did nothing but feed that idea. In our endless coffee chats, they would nod their heads at each of my complaints, reinforcing my victimhood, agreeing with me on everything. Valeria, you have every right to feel this way, Sophia, the most vehement of the group, would tell me. You have been putting up with the same thing for years, sacrificing yourself for that man. It is time for you to think about yourself, about your happiness. It is just that he is not the same man you fell in love with, Carmen, the most sensible one, would add. Routine kills passion. It is a law of life. You cannot live like this, unhappy, dull. And besides, look at yourself, Isabel, the most modern one, would finish. You are a gorgeous, intelligent woman with a lot to offer. You do not deserve a boring and conformist husband. Give yourself a chance to be happy, Valeria. Their words, although well-intentioned, were pure poison for my marriage. They encouraged me to focus on my needs, to seek happiness outside my home, without even trying to fix what was breaking inside. They gave me permission to be selfish, to justify my mistreatment of Gabriel, to believe that I had the right to be happy at the cost of his pain. It was thus that, influenced by this chorus of understanding friends, I began to look for that happiness elsewhere, and I found it, or at least I thought I did, in the figure of Javier, a new work colleague. Javier was everything that, according to me, Gabriel no longer was: young, dynamic, flattering, with a spark of adventure in his eyes that I found irresistible. We started with innocent conversations at the office, exchanging jokes and confidences. Little by little, the flirting became more evident, more risque. We exchanged knowing glances, messages outside of work hours, work lunches that stretched longer than they should have. Javier made me feel desired, admired, alive again. His compliments, his flattery, his constant attention were a balm for my ego, an escape from the monotony of my married life at home. Meanwhile, the situation was becoming increasingly unsustainable. My contempt for Gabriel intensified. I no longer limited myself to rejecting or ignoring him, but I began to humiliate him openly, cruelly, without any kind of scruples. I took every opportunity to criticize him, to belittle him, to make him feel inferior. If he offered to help me with the housework, I would reject him with disdain. Let it be, I will do it, lest you mess it up as always. If he tried to start a conversation about something that worried him, I would interrupt him with sarcasm. Oh, Gabriel, do not bore me with your problems. I have more important things on my mind. If he dressed up a little more to go out, I would cast derogatory glances at him. Where are you going so dressed up, to find yourself a young girl? I did not skimp on insults or humiliations. I made fun of his physique, his incipient baldness, his tireless belly. I belittled his work, his salary, his ambitions. I constantly reminded him of his failures, his mistakes, his limitations. I compared him to other men, to Javier, obviously, always showing him up, making him feel small, useless, despicable. Gabriel, at first, tried to defend himself, to justify himself, to find an explanation for my hostile behavior, but over time his resistance faded. He became quieter, more withdrawn, more absent. His gaze, once full of love and admiration, faded, becoming sad, resigned, empty. And I, instead of feeling guilty, instead of curbing my cruelty, I felt powerful. I enjoyed seeing him suffer, seeing him bow to my contempt. It was as if by humiliating him I was avenging my own unhappiness, my own frustration, my own mediocre life. Over time, Gabriel truly began to fade. His vitality, his joy, his initiative, everything withered like a flower without water. At home, he moved like a silent shadow, doing his chores with resignation, but barely speaking a word to me. He avoided my gaze, fled from my presence, shut himself in his inner world, further and further away from me. I noticed his change, of course. I saw his sadness, his discouragement, his growing emotional distance, but in my selfish blindness, I gave it no importance at all. I was too engrossed in my new life, in my exciting flirtation with Javier, in the constant validation from my friends, to worry about the man I had sworn to love and protect. I thought Gabriel deserved it, that it was the price he had to pay for being boring and unstimulating. In my distorted mind, he was the one to blame for our unhappiness, and I was the victim who had the right to seek happiness wherever I could find it. However, the universe or karma, or whatever you want to call it, had a bitter lesson in store for me. One morning, at the office, I was looking for Javier to coordinate a work matter. I did not find him at his desk, so I decided to go to the break area where he used to have coffee with some colleagues. When I arrived, I saw him there, sitting on a sofa, chatting animatedly with a young intern who had recently joined the company. I recognized Javier's laugh, his seductive tone of voice, and I paused for a moment, unconsciously jealous, before interrupting their conversation. But then I managed to hear part of what they were saying. And my blood ran cold. Yes, it is very funny, really, Javier was saying with a mocking tone he had never used with me. She is completely infatuated with me. Can you believe it? And she is a woman, well, let us say mature, not to say old. The young intern let out a laugh. Old, but deluded, she replied between laughs. She thinks you are really interested in her, that you are serious about her. Javier laughed again with contempt. Please, it is obvious that I'm just using her to pass the time. She is so easy to manipulate, so needy for attention. Besides, she is not bad physically for her age, and I find it amusing to see her fall head over heels for me. Every word from Javier was like a dagger plunging into my heart. Old, deluded, manipulated, used woman. The words echoed in my head, exposing the cruel reality I had refused to see. Javier did not desire me, did not admire me, did not love me. He was just making fun of me, using me to feed his ego, to pass the time, to laugh behind my back with his friends. Humiliation washed over me like an icy wave. I felt shame, anger, pain, and a deep sadness, a piercing feeling of emptiness that spread throughout my being. I ran out of the break area without Javier and his little friend noticing my presence, my face burning with tears, my heart in pieces. I needed comfort, I needed refuge, I needed Gabriel. Yes, paradoxically, in the midst of my humiliation and my pain, my first instinct was to seek out my husband, the man I had so despised, the man who deep down had always been my rock, my support, my confidant. I arrived home with my heart in my throat, desperately seeking that warm embrace, those words of encouragement, that understanding look I had always found in Gabriel. But what I found was a wall of coldness, an invisible barrier that separated me from him, an emotional abyss that I myself had dug with my own hands. The front door closed behind me with a dull thud, leaving behind the humiliation of the office and the mocking echo of Javier's laughter. I entered seeking refuge in my home, seeking comfort in Gabriel's arms, but as I called his name, as I looked for him, I realized that something had changed. Something had been irreparably broken in our dynamic. Gabriel, I called with a trembling voice, hoping to find him in the living room, in the kitchen, in his study. But the house was silent, a cold, dense silence, different from the quiet, familiar silence of before. I finally found him in the bedroom, sitting on the bed, his gaze lost in the void, oblivious to my arrival. "Gabriel, I need to talk to you," I said, approaching slowly, my voice laden with an anguish I could no longer hide. "I feel terrible. Something horrible happened at work." I expected his usual reaction, his protective embrace, his words of comfort, his immediate concern, but this time his response was nothing. He looked at me briefly with a vacant, distant expression, and then looked away again towards the window, as if I were not there. "Gabriel, are you listening to me?" "I'm really upset," I insisted, trying to get closer, seeking his eye contact, desperately needing his connection. "Yes, Valeria, I hear you," he finally replied in a monotonous tone, without any emotion. "What happened?" But his question sounded mechanical, like a mere formality, with no trace of genuine interest. I told him, with my voice choked with sobs, about the humiliation I had suffered at the office, Javier's cruel words, the betrayal. I expected his indignation, his anger, his solidarity with me, but his reaction was even more devastating than his initial indifference. "I see," he said simply when I finished my story, without changing his expression, without moving a muscle. "What did you expect, Valeria?" His question completely threw me off. "What do you mean, what did I expect? How can you say that to me, Gabriel? You do not understand what happened to me. I have been humiliated. They have made fun of me." "And you are surprised," he interrupted in a slightly raised tone, but still with no trace of emotion. "After how you have treated me for months, after all the humiliations I have had to endure from you, did you really expect me to feel compassion for you now?" His words hit me like a whip. For the first time, I was facing reality, the mirror that reflected the image of my own cruelty. For the first time, I understood the damage I had caused him, the deep wound I had opened in his soul. "Gabriel, I'm sorry." I managed to stammer, my voice choked with remorse, with guilt, with the sudden awareness of my mistake. "I have been horrible to you. I know, but I want to change. I want us to go back to how we were before." I tried to approach him, to touch his hand, to seek his embrace, but he pulled away sharply, getting up from the bed, moving away from me as if my touch burned him. "It is too late, Valeria," he said in a cold, distant, final voice. "Too late. I'm tired. Tired of your scorn, tired of your humiliations, tired of trying to save something that you yourself have taken it upon yourself to destroy." He looked me in the eyes for the first time in the entire conversation, but his gaze was no longer the warm, loving gaze of before. Now it was a cold, empty gaze, devoid of all feeling for me. A look of lovelessness. Our marriage has run its course, Valeria, he sentenced with an implacable tone. It is over. The world stopped for a moment. Gabriel's words echoed in my head like a funeral dirge, announcing the end of everything I had thought I had built, of everything I had taken for granted. My marriage, my life, my happiness. Everything was crumbling before my eyes, irreparably. The shock paralyzed me. I did not know what to answer, how to react. Tears began to flow uncontrollably, while the happy memories, the shared moments, the vows of eternal love assailed me like ghosts from the past, torturing me with the nostalgia of what I had lost, of what I myself had destroyed. Why, Gabriel? Why? I managed to ask between sobs, trying to cling to the hope that it was all a misunderstanding, that there was still a chance of salvation. We can change, we can start over. I promise, I will be different. I will treat you better. Please, give me another chance. The tears streamed down my face, choking my words, as I desperately tried to convince Gabriel to reconsider his decision. I promised him I would change, be different, resurrect the woman he loved at the beginning. I swore to him that I would do whatever it took to win back his love, to rebuild our marriage, to erase the damage I myself had caused. But Gabriel remained impassive in the face of my tears, my pleas, my empty promises. He listened to me in silence, with the same cold and distant look that chilled my soul, without showing a hint of compassion or a shadow of a doubt. His decision was made, sealed, irrevocable. Valeria, it is pointless, he finally said in a soft but firm tone, cutting off any hope I might have harbored. We have reached a point of no return. There is no going back. I tried to argue, to insist, to stir his conscience, to appeal to the happy memories, to the years we shared, to the love that once united us. I reminded him of our beginnings, the dreams we built together, the happiness we radiated as a couple. I begged him to remember who we were before I ruined everything, but Gabriel remained unmoved. I remember very well who we were, Valeria, he replied with a hint of sadness in his voice. And that is precisely why I know we can never be that again. You changed, Valeria, and you changed me. You destroyed what we had, and there is no way to rebuild it. I showed him the divorce papers, trying to delay the inevitable, clinging to the hope that he would take pity on my pain, on my belated regret. Please, Gabriel, do not do this. Do not leave me now that I have realized my mistake. Give me another chance, I beg you. I will change. I really will. Gabriel shook his head slowly, with a resignation that broke my heart. I'm sorry, Valeria, but I cannot. I do not love you anymore. His words, spoken with that implacable serenity, were like a final blow. The last thread of hope broke in that instant. I finally understood that it was useless to keep fighting, that I had lost Gabriel forever, that my marriage was irreparably broken. Besides, Gabriel added, hesitating for a moment before continuing. Besides, there is someone else. The revelation hit me with the force of a lightning bolt. Someone else. Who? When? The idea that Gabriel could rebuild his life with another woman after everything I had put him through was unbearable, humiliating, and devastating. Another person. I stammered in disbelief, my heart pounding in my chest. What do you mean? Gabriel sighed deeply and explained to me, in a soft and respectful tone, that during all these months of suffering, while I was scorning and humiliating him, a woman, a work colleague, had approached him, showing him understanding, support, affection. He told me that this woman had been by his side in the darkest moments, offering him comfort and encouragement without asking for anything in return. Nothing has happened between us, Valeria, he hastened to clarify. I have always respected our marriage, but thanks to her friendship, her support, I have managed to overcome depression. I have regained hope. I have started to feel valuable, desirable, alive again. And I have realized that I do not love you anymore, that my path is no longer by your side. My tears intensified upon hearing his confession. Not only had I lost Gabriel, but I had lost him to another woman, to someone who knew how to value him, love him, support him, while I was destroying him with my contempt and my selfishness. The cruel irony of fate hit me with its full force. Can we? Can we turn back time? I managed to ask between sobs, desperately clinging to an impossible fantasy. Start over, get back what we had. Gabriel shook his head gently but firmly. No, Valeria, I'm very sorry, but no. It is too late. Sign the divorce papers. It is the best for both of us. There is nothing more to talk about. And with those definitive words, Gabriel got up and left, leaving me alone, shattered, submerged in a sea of tears and regret, with the divorce papers in my hands and my soul in pieces. My lament, my regret, my desire to change came too late. I had lost Gabriel forever. The divorce process was a slow and painful hell. I refused to sign the papers for months, clinging to an absurd hope, to the fantasy that Gabriel would come back to me, that all of this was a passing nightmare. But Gabriel remained firm and implacable, attending every appointment with his lawyer, presenting the evidence of my mistreatment, of my emotional infidelity, of my constant contempt. There was no plea, no cry, no promise that would make him change his mind. The judge finally ruled on the divorce, and with the signing of the documents, my marriage, my life as I knew it, vanished forever. Depression swallowed me like a black hole. I locked myself in the house, submerged in darkness, refusing to go out, to eat, to live. The happy memories with Gabriel tortured me relentlessly, contrasting cruelly with the loneliness and emptiness that surrounded me. My friends, once so advising and understanding, now seemed distant, uncomfortable with my suffering, as if my unhappiness were contagious. My work performance plummeted. I was late, I was frequently absent, I made huge mistakes. My boss, understanding at first, soon lost her patience. I was fired. Suddenly, I found myself without a husband, without a job, without direction. Gabriel's absence became palpable in every corner of my life. I began to notice his absence in the little things, in the everyday details I had previously taken for granted. I missed his coffee in the morning, his smile when he came home, his hand on my back as I slept, his concern for my problems, his wise advice, his silly jokes that used to irritate me and that I now longed for with desperation. I remembered how he always anticipated my needs, how he made my life easier, how he protected and cared for me, even when I treated him with contempt. And now all of that was gone, snatched away by my own stupidity, by my own arrogance, by my inability to value what I had until I lost it forever. One day, an acquaintance told me that she had seen Gabriel in a restaurant accompanied by a woman. She described the woman to me in detail, elegant, nice, with a sweet and loving look. The description perfectly matched the work colleague Gabriel had mentioned to me. Curiosity, mixed with a sharp pain, prompted me to look for photos of Gabriel on social media, and there they were, recent, radiant photos where he looked happy, smiling, rejuvenated next to that woman. His eyes shone with a sparkle I had not seen in them for years, a light of pure and genuine love. In those photos, Gabriel was not the dull and sad man I had known in our last months together. He was the man I loved at the beginning, even more radiant, more fulfilled, happier. And that happiness was not with me, it was with another woman. The sight of those photos completely destroyed me. I understood with painful clarity the magnitude of my loss. I had destroyed a beautiful marriage, I had lost a wonderful man, and now I saw him flourishing in the arms of another woman, while I was sinking into misery and regret. Divine justice, or the simple law of life, was giving me back with interest all the harm I had caused. My revenge, my sweet revenge for my supposed unhappiness, had turned against me, becoming my own bitter condemnation. At that moment, in the solitude of my empty apartment, I understood that not everything beautiful lasts forever and that I, with my own hands, had destroyed the most precious beauty of my life. And now all that was left for me was to contemplate the broken pieces of my mirror, reflecting my desolate image and my soul forever marked by regret.